Okay, that's good. That's good. So we are good to go. As much as possible, we encourage everyone to mute their mic all through the section. If for any reason you want to make contribution as we go on, you will be encouraged to, you are encouraged to indicate, and after which the presenter will then override the mic muting mandate. So the topics still remain the same: value-added tax, facts about the recent development on VAT in Nigeria. I am Adekunle Cole, the managing consultant of KCP. So in the course of this session, we would have a brief review about the background of VAT. How do we get to where we are? What is the status quo before the advent of VAT in Nigeria? What are the principles of VAT? What are the basic understanding we need to have about VAT with respect to certain peculiar scenarios or transactions that give rise to VAT? VAT occurs in what forms? We'll be talking about that here. Then on the third one, we're looking at some key terminologies relating to VAT, statutory provisions for VAT administration in Nigeria, before we now round it up with recent developments. A lot of this is a section where most people will be allowed to make either commentaries, ask questions about how they've been managing the VAT affairs and concern in the light of the present happenings of their clients or their companies. So what is the intention? What is our basic objective on this session? It is our belief that at the end of this section, participants will have a fair understanding of the concept of VAT and the key terms relating to the administration of VAT in Nigeria. It is also believed that they will have a fair understanding on the legal basis for which VAT is charged and collected in Nigeria. It is also believed that everyone who actively participates in this section will have attained a commensurate understanding of the constitutional precedents of VAT. What is the plight of the law? What is the present, the major basis giving rise to the state agitation for their taxing rights over VAT administration in Nigeria? It is also believed that we all will be able to have good understanding about the justification for the agitation of the state. Why do you think, do you actually agree that legally within the plight of the law, the state has that taxing right, or otherwise we'll get to know when we complete this section? Then major and other contemporary issues of concern. But I want to start on this light note. Most of the time, we are used to certain things, but we don't know how they come to be. So I will want to engage the audience on this plight. When somebody calls you and we respond with hello, what is the meaning of hello? How do we actually come about the term hello? Who has an idea to please share on the chat room? If you think you know the meaning of hello and how we actually came about the term hello, please share on the chat room. Anyone? Anyone who knows the origin of the term or the word hello? It's common in every part of the world. Anybody? Okay, if you don't have the idea about what my question is, just say low on the chat room, please. L-O, low. If you don't have an idea about it, just indicate low. Otherwise, I assume that you have something to say. Oh, okay, okay. So my findings actually reveals that there is a man called Graham Bell, who is the innovator or the person that actually created what we actually call telephone today, right? So in his attempt to testing the device, there is a friend of his which is called Margaret Ello. Margaret Ello is his friend, the first person that he actually test run the device with is Margaret Ello. So in his attempt to calling the name of that is friend Margaret Ello, people then from that particular period henceforth decide to respond or make that particular pronouncement hello whenever we make call. So we can make further findings about it, but by searching on who actually created telephone that we all use today, right? So why do I decide to start on this note? Everyone in Nigeria, or most people in Nigeria, is actually used to the tax called VAT, right? But very many of us did not actually make further findings or concrete findings on how do we actually come to the term VAT. What was the legal precedent? Who was the first person that actually made introduce the tax? What was the intention of the earlier promoters of this particular tax? So on our findings, we trace the origin of VAT tax in Nigeria to our Nigerian constitution. So I decided to start this way, that the origin of taxation in Nigeria, including who is responsible for the collection of the tax in Nigeria, is traceable to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, which was introduced in 1999. Now, on review of this constitution, it is found, we find out that it has about 320 sections therein, and these 320 sections is divided into 8 chapters, and there are 7 schedules. Please listen very well. I'm trying to drive home a point, right? So the Nigerian Constitution has 320 sections in all, but these 320 sections is divided or grouped into 8 chapters. So you have chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, up till 8. That is the first part of the Constitution. And the second part of the Constitution is what we call the schedules. There are 7 schedules. So everything about the affairs, the governance affairs of Nigeria is embodied in this Constitution. So a cursory look, we just want to have a run through. Please follow me as we go on. Chapter 1 of the Constitution actually provides the general provisions about introducing Nigeria as a country and the basic understanding that needs to be had about that. Chapter 2 talks about the fundamental objectives and directive principles of the state policy. Chapter 3 talks about citizenship. Who is a citizen of Nigeria and what are the benefits of the benefits, or how do you make a citizenship of Nigeria? Chapter 4 talks about the fundamental human rights, what we often call fundamental human rights, but in the Constitution, it is expressed as fundamental rights. Chapter 5 talks about the legislations, right? So who are those that make the legislatures, right? How do we elect the legislatures? All of that is embodied in chapter 5. Chapter 6 talks about the executive. Who forms the executive? How do you make the president? What is the prerequisite for becoming the president of Nigeria, and all that sensitive information in that light. Chapter 7 talks about the judicature, that is the judiciary. How is the judiciary managed? How do you make the judiciary? What are the prerequisites, the conditions that need to be fulfilled before you can be a member of this arm of the government? Then chapter 8 talks about the Federal Capital Territory, that is Abuja, and general supplementary provisions. While the other 7 schedules are as follows. Schedule 1, first schedule, talks about the state of the federation. The second schedule talks about the exclusive concurrent legislative list with the supplementary and interpretations. The third schedule talks about the executive council bodies. The fourth schedule talks about the functions of local governments. The fifth talks about the code of conduct. The sixth talks about the electoral tribunals, and the seventh talks about the oath of office that every political office holder has to take, right? But our main area of contention is on the second schedule, the exclusive lists, legislative lists, the concurrent, and the supplementary and interpretation. This is what has given rise to the recent rancor between the state and the federal. The exclusive list actually give a list of items or issues in the as enshrined in the Constitution that only the federal government has legislative power on, right? The concurrent legislative list outline every other component of issues that only the state has legislative power over. However, the National Assembly can actually make some laws on behalf of the state, but it must be those laws that are enshrined within the concurrent list, right? So let's now have a look at what we have on the exclusive list, right? To see whether within the list as initiated or contained in the Constitution, whether it actually talks about anything relating to VAT. So still on the second schedule of the of our Constitution, the parts that relate to the exclusive list, the legislative list. So we have about because of time, I might not go through everything. 1 to about 68, outlining various areas, governance areas that is of concern or within the legislative purview of the federal government. But I want to draw your attention to the area that talks about tax. If you look at section number 57 of it, and 58 and 59 relate to 58 and 59 in particular talks about taxes that are within the legislative purview of the federal government. So 58 talks about stamp duties. That is, it is the federal government that has the legislative power to determine the affairs and the administrative affairs of collections and administration of stamp duty. Now on section 59, it outlined that the federal government has the legislative power over the taxation of incomes, profits, capital gain, except as otherwise prescribed by this Constitution. So it is on this that the state struggle began. That since nothing was mentioned relating to value-added tax, how do we get to where we are Now, where we find out that the federal government is the sole administrator of the affairs on VAT. Please, if you are with me, I need to be very sure that we are all on the same page. If you understand what I've explained thus far, can you just indicate I on the chat room? Awesome, awesome. So I want to have a fair assessment of what I've explained thus far, right? I started with trying to relate, identifying the significance of knowing the origin of something, right? Anything we are used to, we need to know how it has come to be. I started with explaining the concept of a law that is a normal communication greetings when we want to make call, right? I related that to VAT, saying that it has its origin from our Nigerian constitution, not just VAT, all taxes that it's administered or administrable in Nigeria today. I further made mention of the various components of our Nigerian constitution. Who can tell me how many sections we have in our Nigerian constitution? I mentioned this at the beginning of this session. Who can recall how many sections do we have? How many sections, please? You can just state it, type it on the chat room. 320, 320. Now, this 320 section is divided into how many chapters? How many chapters? How many chapters? We have 320 sections, very correct. How many chapters can were these classified to? I mentioned these in the course of my presentation. No, it's not 7 chapters. No, 7 is not correct. 8, exactly. 8 is correct. 8 chapters. No, it's not 5, it's 8 chapters. Then I also mentioned that in addition to the chapters, the section, there were a certain number of schedules, right? How many schedules do we have as contained in the section, in the Constitution? I mentioned 7 schedules. That is very correct. So we are good to go. We are good to go. So what then, since VAT is not specifically mentioned among the list of items, that the federal government has legislative power on, right? It then means that if the federal government does not have this legislative power, that power then is can be relinquished to the states. But before we go into the in-depth of this and all the argument between the states and the federal government, what is this VAT itself? What is this VAT itself? Prior to 1993, when we actually have an enabling act on value-added tax, we used to have what we call the sales tax. Sales tax is then applicable on selling price of various goods or services, majorly goods or services as the case may be, right? But because of the bottlenecks that is being encountered on the administration of the sales tax. Sales tax, don't forget, as I did, was majorly within the purview of the state government, right? So prior to 1993, before the act actually became a law, VAT was introduced. But what is VAT itself? VAT is said to be a consumption tax. That is, you will only bear this form of tax only when you consume certain goods, right, that are vatable, or when you have when you benefit from services that are liable to VAT, right? So if you do not consume anything or you didn't patronize the service of any vatable service providers, you will then not incur this tax. So to an extent, VAT is a form of consumption tax that is direct in nature. Oliver Oldman defined VAT as a multi-stage consumption tax leveled on the difference between the firm's sales and the value of its purchase inputs used in producing them. So what this means is that if I, as a seller, Adekunle, sell certain goods, say a telephone for 700,000, but this telephone, as I had earlier purchased it for 500,000. For having purchased that, I will have incurred a VAT on it. And as at the time I'm making the sales too, I'm also expected to what? Charge the VAT. So the actual VAT that is due to be remitted or rendered to the relevant taxing authority is then the difference between what I have incurred on my purchase and what I have also charged on my sales. The VAT on purchases is said to be what we call input VAT, while the VAT on what you sell is referred to as the output VAT, right? Take note of that. I earlier said that VAT is an indirect tax on the domestic consumption of goods or services, except those that are zero rated. What do we mean by zero rated VAT? There are various types of VAT, one of which is zero rated. When do we say VAT is zero rated? When do we say VAT is zero rated? Who has an idea? If you have an idea, state on the chat room. When do we say that VAT is zero rated? Anybody? Oh, cousin, that may be wrong. Zero rated VAT are VAT that are charged at 0%. Zero rated VAT are VAT, Kennedy, that's very correct. Zero rated VAT are VAT that are charged at 0%. Okay, that's noted. Thank you for that. So primarily, the logic of VAT administration in Nigeria is known as the consumption principle. Now, what do we mean by this? What we mean by that is that, number one, it is whoever that is consuming that very good that is being sold or benefiting from the service that will bear the burden of VAT. Then it is also important, as expected in our law, that the relevant tax authority, which is closest to the party that is benefiting from the consumption of the goods or service, that also has a taxing right. What does this mean? This implies that if I am in Nigeria and I purchase certain goods, let's say a motor vehicle, say for example, Ghana, say for example. Now, because I am in Nigeria, it is expected that I am the one benefiting from that very consumption of that very good, right? So it is the Nigerian government that has a taxing right to actually levy that VAT and collect the VAT, right? So I hope that is noted. If you don't understand that, please indicate. If you understand, no problem. But if you don't understand this about the consumption principle, please indicate. Okay, so
changed.
Hold on, please. Hold on. All right, thank you for that observation. So Azuka said I should explain the consumption principle again. So I'm taking that again. Consumption principle is basically a VAT principle. We said that VAT is administered on the consumption principle. Remember that when we talk about personal income tax, it's a function of where the income earner is resident. So personal income tax or payee is majorly administered on a residency principle. It is wherever you are resident, the closest tax authority to where you are resident, that is who will have the taxing right over the income. But reverse is the case with the VAT principle, which we call the consumption principle. We actually locate the tax authority that is closest to the beneficiary of that goods that is being consumed. Where is the person who is consuming the goods or benefiting from the service located? You understand? So that is what determines who has a taxing right. So, and I gave an illustration that if I am located or resident in Nigeria and I'm buying goods from Ghana, because I am buying the good, that is a form of imported goods, right? Because I am located in Nigeria, I'm resident in Nigeria, who has the taxing rights between the Ghanaian government and the Nigerian government. So based on our own VAT law in Nigeria, it is the Nigerian government that has the taxing rights, right? So that is what I meant by the consumption principle. So irrespective of the nature of the transaction, the location of the transacting parties, so determine the relevant taxing authority between the opposing countries, you have to look at where is the beneficiary, the final beneficiary of that particular service or good, where are they located, right? That is what we meant by that. So hence, it is the final consumer of the goods or service that bears the VAT tax burden. It is also important to stress here that transactions that could result to VAT can occur based on three forms of three different transaction structure. One is VAT accruing on local transactions. What do we mean by local transactions? Transactions that occur within Nigeria. When company A located in Nigeria transacts with another company B located in Nigeria, provided the transacting goods or services are vatable, Nigerian government will be the responsible party. That's one. Two is transaction between entities that are resident in Nigeria and entities that are resident outside Nigeria, abroad in any other country across the world, provided the party that is benefiting from the goods traded or the services rendered is within the shores of Nigeria. Nigeria will still be or have the taxing rights. The third form is where you don't have an interface with a foreign entity. Rather, you have a Nigerian that is importing goods through the Nigerian border. That is called the imported goods, right? Nigerian government will also have the taxing right. So we have VAT that could accrue through local transactions, VAT that could accrue through entities at different national boundaries, then VAT that accrues through importations. So going on, we've also explained that VAT is charged on the supply of taxable goods and service, except where it is specifically exempt or zero rated. The current law guiding the taxation of VAT in Nigeria is called the Value Added Tax Act. V1 Value Added Tax Act as at 1993. There have been several amendments after then. But within the plight of the ongoing rancor between the state and the federal, this particular act is still on hold. We are yet to determine, we are expecting the court verdict on who actually has that taxing right. So VAT is also a form of consumption tax. It is based on the value of the supply of goods and the services that are rendered. The burden of VAT usually falls on the end consumer. Up till now, VAT is paid to the federal government by every taxable person. But the question is, should this be? So the question is, should this be? Do you think the federal government still has the taxing right on the VAT administration in Nigeria? VAT that is collected by the federal government is presently shared between the 3 tiers of government. Who can give me a list of the 3 tiers of government that currently benefits on VAT collected in Nigeria? Who can give a list of all the VATs? I mean, the beneficiaries of the VAT collected in Nigeria. Okay, very awesome. So it shows you are very correct. The federal, the state, and the local government. That's correct. So who can also state in what proportion is it shared between the states, the federal, and the local government? Azuka is not between SRS and LRS. It's strictly between the federal government, the state government across the states in Nigeria, and the local government. How is this VAT shared between the federal, the state, and the local government? You can confirm, please. Any idea? How is the VAT shared between the states, the federal, and the local government in Nigeria? How is it shared? I'm expecting more response. What is the sharing formula between the states, the federal, and the local government? Osaze is not 53, 27, 20. That is wrong. Hello, I'm still expecting a response. Azuka confirmed that it is 15 to FIRS, 50 to SIRS, and 35 not to LIRS, but the local governments. The local governments across the states, across the country. Then that 50%, that is shared to the states, what is the sharing formula? How is it shared? Did they just share it equally across all the states in Nigeria? Or how is it shared? Who has an idea? Who has an idea? Okay, because of time, let me quickly put that across. It is not entirely on equality basis. There are actually 3 parameters, right? The 3 parameters or the metrics are, they're using equality, population, and derivation. By equality, that means that 50% of everything that is due to all the states will be shared equally among all the states in Nigeria. Another 30% of it will be shared based on the population of each state in the country. So the states that has the higher population will then take more, right? Then the last apportionment ratio is the derivation. 20%, the remaining 20% is then shared according to the state that actually contributed more to the total VAT generated across the country. So, and that is what one of those issues that actually gave rise to this rancor, that the fact that some states are highly populated does not necessarily mean that they contribute commercially more to the general pulse. So some states has been aggrieved, including including River State and the Lagos State have been aggrieved, and that is one of the issues that give rise to this. The 2 major factors are, number 1, that in the first place, the federal government should not even be collecting this tax, right? Each state, because it's not on the exclusive list, the federal government does not have the right to actually, legislative right to actually collect this tax. 2, the sharing formula adopted by the federal government across the states in Nigeria, some states they felt dissatisfied because they felt that they contributed more, but they are not getting a fair share in proportion to their contributions. So it is also important to stress the fact that our VAT is accounted for via the output or input credit system. So it then means that if you have suffered any form of VAT before now, that portion of the VAT that you have suffered as input will be recognized before, will be recognized and net off the output VAT. VAT is also administered through what we call a wash-through tax system. So what that then means is that, so the extent of the input VAT that you have suffered on VATable transactions, right? It will be refunded, or you will claim it back based on the output. But note, it is not all items that you have suffered VAT on that you can actually recoup the VAT, the input VAT. Say, for example, the VAT incurred or suffered on assets, fixed assets, cannot be recovered through this particular wash-through tax. Rather, it can only be capitalized alongside the cost of that asset. Then VAT also incurred on some administrative expenses cannot be recovered through this credit system. It can only be recovered through what we call an expense system. So expense it on the statement of your profit or loss, and so be it, right? So note that it is also important that if the entity that suffered that particular VAT is not registered as a VAT agent, you can claim the VAT you have incurred back. That is why every final consumer that is not in business to retrade that very item that gave rise to the VAT cannot claim the VAT back. Please, if you can see my screen indicates, I want to be sure that we are on the same page. I think I'm having some technical issue here. Please confirm if you can see my screen. So please confirm now if you can see my screen, please. Okay, good. So we are good to go. Thank you. So I also believe that we've been able to explain, for the sake of those who are not, who don't have hands-on knowledge on VAT. We have explained what an input VAT is. That is the VAT you incur or you suffer on what you purchase, right? And if it is an asset, it cannot be recovered. You have to capitalize it. If it is an administrative expense, you cannot claim it back. You only have to write it off through your profit or loss account. But if it is on goods that you want to resell or you want to manufacture, you can definitely regard it as an input VAT. As at when that good that you want to resell has been sold, what you then charge on the sales is called the output VAT. Before you then make remittance to the relevant tax authority, you are expected to deduct the input from the output to know the VAT payable. I've also taken time to explain what I mean by the zero-rated goods or services, right? These are goods and services that are actually VATable, but their VAT rate is at 0%. VAT exempt is an exemption from VAT payment on certain goods and services, right? So please take note that VAT exempt is not the same thing as zero-rated VAT or zero-rated goods and services. For zero-rated, it is actually VATable, but it's at 0%. But VAT exempt, it is not VATable at all. A typical example of VAT exempt is what you have currently on the first schedule of our Value Added Tax Act. An example of them includes the baby products, basic food items, exported goods and services, and mention them. There are so more. Can anyone give us another example of VAT exempt? Those goods or services that are not liable to VAT at all. Education, correct. You also have medical services. Who can give us one more? Anyone? Okay, so Shehu asked a very important question. if we say some goods are actually zero rated, meaning that you cannot you can actually charge VAT at 0%, and you have incurred input VAT, how then can you claim the inputs? So number one is that you have the option of actually, first of all, you need to establish the fact whether you are actually a VAT agent, right? Two, you definitely have to seek a credit system refund from the relevant taxing authority, but they will not just give you that credit, not until after you must have been audited to be sure that your claims are actually correct. All right, so next is, with the amendment of the VAT Act, the following have been accorded the status of zero-rated VAT. You have all non-oil exports, goods and services purchased by diplomats are also regarded as zero-rated VAT. Goods purchased for use in humanitarian donor-funded projects, they are also regarded as zero-rated. And I've also earlier explained what we meant by exempt VAT. Because of time, let's just suspend every other question till when to the question and answer section, please. So these are further examples of exempt goods or services: medical and pharmaceutical products, basic food items, medical services, baby products, books and educational materials, and the likes. Then it is also important to also stress that within the purview of the FRS circular, residential property, rents paid on residential property has also been accorded VAT exempt status. Water has also been exempted accordingly, and imports of petroleum products. What do we mean by reverse VAT? What do we mean by reverse VAT? So we have explained the normal nature of VAT, where what you suffer from what you bought is the input VAT, what you charge or what you sell is the output VAT, and the net of these two should be remitted to the federal government before now, and the relevant taxing authority will, until when the relevant taxing authority is determined by the competent court, right? So one could not say emphatically whether as at today, federal government still has a taxing right or the state government still has a taxing right. It is the court that has the power to decide. So we still await the judgment in that very regard. But what do we mean by reverse VAT? You remember that I said at the very beginning of my session that VAT could accrue on local transactions, that is, transactions within a country. VAT could also accrue on imported goods, right? So who collects that from the VAT on imported goods? It is the customs at the port that actually collect that. What then happens if you have company A in Nigeria and company B in Mauritius? And company B in Mauritius has rendered service to company A in Nigeria. Ordinarily, that is an example of an imported service, right? If that service has been patronized or rendered in Nigeria, it definitely might have attracted VAT. So there is a provision in the current Value Added Tax Act currently in use by the federal government in the administration of VAT, section 10 of it, that says that whenever any entity resident in Nigeria, any VATable person resident in Nigeria, enjoy service from non-resident entities, entities that are not in Nigeria, that form of service is regarded as imported service. So the Nigerian government, the Nigerian entity is expected to self-charge itself the VAT and remit to the relevant taxing authority. I'll take that again. Company A is a Nigerian company. Company B is resident in Mauritius. Let's assume it's a legal firm, right? For a reason best known to Company A, they need the legal service of a lawyer in Mauritius. So they consulted Company B to render that service. It is very likely that based on the law, based on the VAT law in that very country, they may or may not charge Company A in Nigeria VAT. What happens where in their invoice VAT is charged? Will this same invoice still be subject to VAT in Nigeria? That is scenario A. What happens if VAT is not charged, right? Whether VAT will be charged or otherwise, so far as you are enjoying a service that is not specifically exempt for VAT, rendered to you by any company which is not a Nigerian entity, the Nigerian entity who is consuming or benefiting that service has to self-charge itself. Do you understand? It has to self-charge itself. So when you self-charge when the company self-charge itself and you want to file that very returns with the FIRS, we call it reverse VAT. It is different from every other regular VAT. The normal VAT is called the output VAT, when you just take the difference between your input and your output and you remit the difference on local transactions. This very one is you have enjoyed goods or services provided to you or rendered by a company not in Nigeria, right? So provided that form of service is a vatable service or good, you need to self-charge yourself and remit to the relevant tax authority. But when you are filing such returns, you file it as a reverse VAT. I believe that concept is clear. I believe the concept is clear. If you understand that, simply type yes on the chat room. If you understand that, simply type yes on the chat room. If you understand that, simply type yes on the chat room. Hello, I want to be sure you are with me. Oh, Cousin said I should repeat. Okay, so let me explain it again. Of course, it's kind of complicated. Okay, listen again. Reverse VAT most of the time accrue on imported service, most of the time. Because if it is transactions within the country, Company B that rendered the service to Company A will have normally raised VAT on its invoice, right? So in that wise, there is no issue of somebody having need to file a reverse VAT. But because the federal government before now want to catch up with non-resident entities, they want to catch up with non-resident entities that are not in Nigeria, but making income that are vatable in Nigeria, right? The only way the government can actually catch up with them is by following through with those that benefited from the service, right? Remember we said The relevant taxing authority will be determined by the location of the person that consumed the goods or benefited from the service. That is a consumption principle, right? So if I, as Adekunle, engage a lawyer in Ghana, when the lawyer finished rendering the service, the lawyer will invoice me, send me an invoice. It is possible that in the lawyer's invoice, based on the VAT law in Ghana, they may charge VAT on that service. It's also possible that VAT, the law in that country may exempt such kind of service. Do you understand? So the point of our Nigerian tax law on this form of transaction is that provided that line of service or that nature of goods is vatable in Nigeria. Are you with me? Provided it is vatable in Nigeria, whether the foreign entity that rendered the service charge VAT or not, right? The Nigerian entity that enjoyed that service or consumed the goods must self-charge itself and remit that VAT to the relevant tax authority, right? But we want to differentiate what are those VAT that accrues on what the Nigerian entity sold itself in Nigeria, and what are the ones that accrue from other costs that it incurred by reason of the service it enjoyed or the goods it consumed, right? So these two sources of VAT has to be filed separately, right? The first one that accrue on the local transactions are filed as output VAT, which is the net of the output charge and the input charge. But this second one is filed as a reverse VAT. So if you are the accountant of a company or you are rendering tax services to your client, and your client has these two different sources of VAT, the VAT returns must be filed separately, one as reverse VAT, the other as the output VAT. Is it clear now? Please confirm, Azukad, do you understand it? Please confirm on the chat room if that explanation is well taken. I need a confirmation if that is well clarified. Okay, so that's good. We can go on. So statutory provisions on VAT, we are getting to the main bone of contention. Value Added Tax Act in Nigeria is administered through the following legislation. We have earlier established the fact that anything called tax in Nigeria has their primary origin from the Nigerian Constitution. The Constitution also determines who has the taxing rights. As you know, that some taxes are within the purview of the federal government, some taxes are also within the purview of the state government, while some taxes are within the purview of the local governments. Who determine who should collect what is as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution. So we take it that the statutory provisions of this form of tax we're looking at today, number one source is from the Constitution. Number two is from the decided cases by the competent courts in Nigeria, right? So you will see as the legal battle between the state and the federal, what the court will then say or give as its judgment will then kill the issue, right? So as we speak, until when there is a clarification on this matter or any other clarification the court gives on any VAT or tax issue, it also serves as a legal precedent on any tax matter. So that is why we are taking that as a second source of the statutory provisions of our VAT law. Then the third is the various court pronouncements, right? The various court pronouncements will also serve as a statutory provisions of the VAT law or the act. Then the last one is the Value Added Tax Act itself. As we speak, we have the Value Added Tax Act of 1993, which the FIRS is currently using in administering its VAT collections. Then, as we speak, the Rivers State government has also introduced its Value Added Tax Act, and Lagos State has also introduced its own Lagos State Value Added Tax Act. Information at the public domain also confirms that some other states like Oyo State, Ogun State are also, Akwa Ibom and the likes, are also reviewing within their legislative arm to coming up with a substantive pronouncement should the court's verdict goes in the favor of the state. In my earlier explanation too, I've explained how the VAT collected by the federal government is being distributed between the states, the federal and the local government in the ratio of 15% to the federal, 50% to all the states, and 35% to all the local governments. And I further explain and stress that that 50% that is allocated to the states is shared using three different metrics: equity, population, and derivation. By equity, it means that 50% of what is due to all the states. Let's assume that 200 million is collected as value added tax in a particular month, right? Just for example, 50% of that 200 million is 100 million. So out of that 100 million, 50% of it is 50 million, is shared to all the states equally, right? 30% of that 100 million is 30 million, is shared to all the states also based on the population of each of the states. So you can have states that did not contribute fairly to the total VAT generated, but still have more than the state that contributes more. That actually contributed more. So then the remaining 20% is then shared based on who contributed more. And the state governments championed by the Rivers State government felt dissatisfied that why will they, Rivers State, Lagos State, and other major contributors, why will they be major contributor to the state, to the general purse, and not be having fair apportionment from that particular collection? That is one of their main issues that gave rise to this particular rancor between the federal and the state. So the legal perspective on VAT, with the VAT laws in mind, are there any specification that gives the FIRS the VAT holding capacity? What we mean is that, do you think, in your own view, based on all we have said thus far, we have now gotten to the discussion section. But before you talk on this, you have the option of either making your commentary via the chat room, or if you know that your where you are is without noise, you can indicate if you want to make your contribution, and whether your contribution or question, as the case may be, and make that your commentary. Do you think, based on what we have explained thus far, and in the light of everything we have read from paper, we have read from various media sources, based on the Federal High Court judgment in Rivers State, the Court of Appeal judgment in Abuja, and the pending case on this particular tax with the Supreme Court, do you think, in your own opinion, that the FIRS still has the collection right on VAT? What is your view? What is your view? If you have an opinion about that, let's hear your view. You can either communicate with me through the chat room, or you indicate and I will give you the permission to unmute your mic. But we have to do this with all sense of decorum. So I'm listening to you. What is your view? Do you think the federal government, based on all that we have explained thus far, do you think the federal government has the taxing rights, or the state has the taxing rights? Remember, we have explained that the major and the only originator or determinant of who collects what tax is as contained in the Nigerian Constitution. And we have also explained earlier that based on what we have on the exclusive list, VAT is not actually expressly stated as part of the taxes that the federal government has legislative rights on, right? In your own view, do you think the federal government has the taxing rights, or the state government has the taxing rights? Okay, Azuka is of the view that the state has a taxing right. Can you state why? Why do you think so? Why do you think so? Why do you think so? Anybody want to make contribution? Okay, Osaze just mentioned a very valid point, saying that he did not object that state has a taxing right, right? That is correct. But in terms of capacity or practicability, do we think the state can handle? That is another subject of discourse, right? If you look at the paper today, the Rivers State government makes some insightful commentary about the general public opinion that the state may not have the capacity or practicability to manage this form of taxes, particularly if you draw reference from some of the nature or the sources of this VAT, the ones that relate to importations. Not all the states has ports where goods can be cleared. What then happens if they have paid the input duty or VAT to Lagos State, and the goods is actually sold in another state? Does it then mean that Lagos State will then refund the make the refund to the entities, or how will that be done? That is a different bone of contention. What the states are agitating for as we speak is that if the law says that they should collect the tax, then they should allow them to collect it. If you take time to also read the provisions of the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution, particularly with regards to the legislative responsibilities, the National Assembly has that, they have that power to actually mediate into taxing issues that could create conflict between different states. So I'm not speaking for the courts, but I think, in my view, that the state should be allowed to collect its own tax, but before they allow them to collect their own tax, or before that particular operation kicks off as we speak, States should try to have a consensus where they can meet to identify what could be the various possible constraints if they so choose to administer these taxes. How will these particular constraints be what? Reconciled amidst conflicting states, right? There has to be that clarity about how that administration will be how those bureaucracies or complications will be administered when they so arise. But I still want to hear your own view. What is your own view? Is there anybody that is having a conflicting view? Is there anyone that's having a conflicting view? Okay, if there is no one that has any conflicting view, we also give you an opportunity to actually ask any question relating to VAT issues, whether the ones you encounter in the course of your work. How have you been filing the VAT in the plight of this confusion? Have you been advising your clients to filing with, to paying or remitting the taxes to the FIRS, or what have you been doing? For those who have questions, you can ask, what are the areas of confusion? What are the issues you want us to clarify on VAT? I'm waiting. Any question on VAT? I'm sure you all know that VAT, stories around VAT is even much more complicated than we have tried to simplify. But because of time, it cannot be exhausted within this limited time we have. So during this section, you have the opportunity to ask any questions, whether relating to all this legal tussle between the state and the federal, or who has the collective rights, or on any other taxing, on any other VAT concern you might have encountered. Okay, so Alex just asked that now that the VAT tussle or who acts the taxing right is still in court, where should the taxpayers, who should they relate with? Are they to relate with the states? Are they to relate with the federal, that is the FIRS? So our honest view is that it is actually the courts that asks a final say on this. What we can only do is to manage the situation in the interim. And please, this is our honest opinion, it does not constitute an advice that any client should use. It is just our honest opinion. Our view is that everyone should wait till when the court actually gives clarity on this misconception, right? While we also encourage the court to expedite the process of that hearing such that clarity can be obtained as soon as possible. But in the interim, we are of the view that filings should be made with the state, with the federal, possibly new returns, provided invoice has also not been raised, right? That's one. Two, why we are of that view is that even though the state has actually given, some of the state has actually come up with their VAT Act, we are also expecting the state to give clarity on the administrative process of this, of the VAT within their state, because other than the registration guideline that the law actually recognizes, which account are they to remit to when the judgment eventually goes in their favor? So we are encouraging states to give clarity on the general administration of the VAT as is expected in their state. But until then, it is my honest view, not an advice to anyone, it is my honest view that new returns provided the invoice has not been raised be filed with the FIRS. Okay, somebody just asked a question that if the judgment did not favor FIRS, what is the plight of the state? Well, it is expected that the state should give clarity on how they choose to administer the VAT in their state. They will give clarity with regards to will there be credit system for VAT, input VAT incurred in other states, and the output VAT due in their state. We need clarity on the area. We need clarity on where will the VAT be remitted to. When you are making remittance of other form of tax, or there is an information out there about the account to be paid to and what forms to be filled. Is it an online process? Is it a manual process? So we're expecting the state to come up with this clarity on how that ambiguity will be unraveled. And somebody just also asked that would there be penalty leviable by the states for not having complied as of today? I technically don't think so, because the tax law in those states have been introduced, yes, and it actually spelled out what the administrative procedure should be, but we still want them to give clarity on where should be the right approach, the manner, what are the forms to be filled, will it be done online? For those states that have automated their administrative processes, they update the VAT section online too. So there is still a need for clarity on that area. I'm thinking that there may not be penalty until when all this misconception has been unraveled and when proper clarity has been made available to the public. Any other question? Any other question? Okay, so Alex just asked whether if it is possible for the video section of this recording be available. Yes, it will be available on our YouTube channel. You will have to subscribe to our channel on the YouTube. Look for KCP there, Kunle Cole and Partners, KCP, and follow us on our YouTube channel. It will be made available to you on the YouTube channel. Then for the materials, we already have your email address for those who actually subscribed to this particular registration guidelines. We will send to you the slide, the training slide. We'll send it to you. Any other question? So please feel free to reach out to us should you have any other issue. Our website is I'm typing it on the chat room, www.kcp.com.ng. You can reach out to us on info@kcp.com.ng on any issue of concern to you. KCP is a tax professional firm that renders tax services, accounting services, audit services, and training services. You are currently enjoying part of our free training session. Should you require any other aspect of our services be free to reach out to us through our email or contact us through our website. or personally call my line 090-244-00652. That is also my WhatsApp line. You can call me for any issue relating to tax, relating to audits, and accounting generally. Osaze is asking, how will VAT payable at point of importation be administered if judgment favor the state? It's still part of the issue that we have, part of the constraints that we have identified. I think until then, each state will have to come up with the modality for that very arrangement. But based on the provisions in our constitution, when that particular constraint keep on is not addressed unanimously by all the states, the National Assembly has that legislative power to provide guidance, legislative provisions on how to manage that. I believe that answers your question. Okay, so Osaze also asks, how can company claim input VAT for international transactions? Remember, I earlier clarified that VAT could accrue on local transaction, it can accrue on imported goods, it can accrue on international transaction. If the local transaction that you carried out is purchase of fixed assets, you cannot claim input VAT on it. We have instances whereby people or entities purchase machineries from abroad. The provision of the existing law provides that you have to capitalize that cost and claim capital allowance on it. You can't claim input VAT on property, plant, and equipment. Secondly, if the input VAT you incur on this international transaction is also in respect of administrative services, you also cannot claim input VAT on that, right? The provision of the law is that you should expense that particular portion of the VAT alongside with the respective expense head. You expense it in your profit or loss account. For example, I engage a lawyer in Ghana to render service to me. There is no how I can claim the input VAT. I will only write off that input element as part of my legal expenses, and that will be treated as an allowable expense. Then the third scenario is if the international transaction is in respect of imported goods to be sold, provided you are making the resale or you are using that as an input to produce other goods, you can then claim the input when you want to, after you must have charged the output, you net it from the input, then remit the difference. As I say, I believe that answers your question. I believe that answers your question. Any other question? Any other question? So please, you are encouraged to follow us on our LinkedIn. Our LinkedIn page is Kunle Cole and Partners. Subscribe for regular updates. You can also follow us on Facebook, Kunle Cole and Partners, KCP. You can follow us on Instagram, Kunle Cole and Partners, KCP, right? Right. Then if you want to reach us personally, you can either call my line 090-244-00652, or you email us at info@kcp.com.ng. Any question before we wrap up this section? So I want to encourage you to keep on checking the trends of news on this particular issue. As a firm, we will continue to update you as soon as we have the clarity of the court on this issue. We will definitely call for another session so that we can then analyze in details the various components of the Value Added Tax Act as contained in the law enacted by the Lagos State, the River State, and every other state as it comes up. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you need any advice or you need our services on tax, on audit, on accounting, or even if you need any training on any accounting standards and the likes. We'll be willing to be of service to you. I want to appreciate you for your time, the time spent with us, and we encourage you to continue to keep safe and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you, Ezuka.